Don't you dare hang up on me, Claire. Ryan's voice exploded through the speaker. My fingers hovered over the phone, trembling, but I ended the call anyway. The silence that followed was louder than his shouting. 5 minutes later, my work phone buzzed, a message from my boss. Need to see you. Now. The timing was too perfect. My stomach dropped. The pressure in my head pulsed like a live wire. I'd been staring at the quarterly analysis for Mason Grant's portfolio, a report that could make or break my year at Ashford and Vale Investments. The deadline was 5 p.m., no excuses. And now, Ryan had dragged me straight into another disaster. He'd called me 3 hours earlier, begging for $5,000 to lock in a once-in-a-lifetime deal. Same script, different day. I finally told him no, firmly, for the first time in my life. He'd lost his mind, calling me selfish, cold, ungrateful. Then he dropped his usual threat, "You'll regret this, Claire. I promise you." Apparently, he meant it. When I stepped into Daniel Mercer's glass office, the air was thick with tension. Julia from HR was already there, arms folded. Daniel's expression was unreadable. He motioned for me to sit. "We received a concerning call this morning. Someone said you've been showing signs of instability. Erratic behavior. They claimed you might be compromising client data." Ryan. My pulse hammered. Julia slid a printed email across the table. "This came from your personal account." I scanned the page, a string of messages Ryan had forged, using my old signature, implying insider trading. My own brother had framed me. I looked up, my voice steady. "You're right. That email did come from my account. But it wasn't written by me." Daniel leaned forward, skeptical. "Do you have proof?" "Yes," I said, pulling out my phone. He forgot that I've been tracking my devices ever since he borrowed my laptop last summer. I opened the app, showing the log. Here's the IP address, and the location. His apartment. Julia's eyebrows shot up. Daniel exhaled slowly, realization dawning. I met their eyes, calm for the first time all day. Ryan's been trying to ruin me since I cut him off financially. He just didn't expect I'd be ready for him this time. The silence stretched, heavy and electric. Daniel finally spoke. "We'll handle this internally. You did the right thing, Claire." As I walked back to my office, the ache behind my eyes returned, but it wasn't from stress anymore. It was the weight of freedom, painful, but necessary. Ryan had always believed I existed to save him. He just learned that I could save myself, too. If you love real emotional stories, hit subscribe, we post one every week. I'd reluctantly agreed to co-sign the lease. 3 months later, a collection agency called. Ryan had vanished, leaving me responsible for over $12,000 in unpaid rent and damages. When I confronted him, he laughed like it was nothing. "Claire, relax. It's just money. You've got plenty of it." He didn't pay me back. Not for the car repairs, the credit card debt I'd cleared, or the endless, "just $100 till Friday," texts that always became black holes. For years, guilt had kept me quiet. But that guilt was gone now, burned out and replaced by something colder, fury sharpened by exhaustion. I wasn't just angry about my drained savings account. I was angry at the way he moved through life, untouchable and careless, wrecking things and expecting others to clean them up. That was the pattern. I'd enabled it for too long. I turned to my computer and opened the locked folder on my desktop labeled Records. I'd started it after the apartment fiasco. At the time, it felt over the top, maybe even paranoid. But now I saw it for what it was, insurance. Inside were screenshots of every text, every email, every lie Ryan had spun. Every manipulative message, every threat, every guilt trip. I told myself it was for peace of mind, a way to remind myself that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't the selfish one. But deep down, I knew I'd been preparing for this. Collecting receipts for the moment when truth would matter more than family. I added the latest messages from this morning. Ryan, in all his reckless arrogance, never understood the one thing I never forgot: I keep records for a living. It's literally my job. Our relationship was a case study in one-sided sacrifice. I was 4 years older, and from the moment he was born, I was his safety net. The good daughter. The one who stayed in line while he got to burn the rulebook. Our parents, Linda and Charles, had built that dynamic like a family tradition. Ryan was the free spirit. I was the responsible one. When I got straight A's, they called me serious. When Ryan dropped out of college to find himself, they called him brave. I worked through college, buried in student loans, while he drifted from one scheme to another: failed startups, unpaid loans, a trail of overdraft accounts. I was the one who drove across state lines to post bail after a bar fight. I was the one who quietly paid his rent when he got fired. I was the one explaining to our parents why their golden boy's credit was in ruins. And through it all, they used my success as justification for his failures. "You're doing so well, Claire," Mom would say. "It's not like you have a family to support." Translation: Ryan's mistakes are your problem. They never understood what it took for me to build this life: 70-hour work weeks, no vacations, no shortcuts. My success wasn't luck. It was sacrifice. But to them, it made me an endless resource. A walking bailout fund. Ryan, 28 and still calling himself an entrepreneur, spent his days pitching hollow business ideas to anyone who'd listen. He posted pictures online of champagne bottles and skyline views, all funded by borrowed money and emotional manipulation. But it wasn't just him anymore. My parents had become his enablers, the architects of his delusion. When I finally drew a line, they took it as betrayal. "Don't be so harsh," Mom sighed when I told her I was done lending money. "He's trying to find his footing. It's a hard world." "He's 28, I said tightly. "I can't keep paying for his mistakes. I have my own future to think about." Dad's tone was final. "Family helps each other, Claire. Maybe when you have a little less, you'll understand what real struggle is." I hung up, stunned. In their eyes, my ambition was arrogance. My success, a flaw. My money, a family resource. And for the first time, I realized the truth: Ryan wasn't the only one I needed to cut off. My sacrifices had never been seen as kindness, only duty. To Ryan, they were his birthright. He could summon tears like a stage actor, spin tragedies about missed chances and cruel luck until I almost believed him. He wasn't just manipulative, he was professional grade. A black hole of need. And for years, I'd been his fuel source. But today, the line was cut. The silence in my office didn't feel empty, it felt protective. I knew he wouldn't take it quietly, but for the first time in decades, I was ready for the fallout. For about an hour, the world was calm. Long enough for me to finish the first draft of Mason Grant's portfolio analysis. Then the doubt crept in, soft but corrosive. Was I too harsh? Too cold? Maybe he really did need help. The pounding in my temples returned, a steady reminder of the war between logic and guilt. Then my desk phone rang, that crisp corporate chime that never meant good news. "Claire, can you step into my office, please?" Daniel Mercer's voice was flat, stripped of its usual warmth. My stomach twisted. I saved my file, smoothed my blazer, and walked to his corner office, the polished floor amplifying each step. He was waiting behind his desk, posture rigid, expression unreadable. "Close the door," he said. The latch clicked, loud, final. "Have a seat." I sat, spine straight, pulse roaring in my ears. Claire, he began slowly, I just received a call from your brother, Ryan. The air in my lungs vanished. He said he's worried about you, Daniel continued carefully. He claims you've been acting erratically. That you might be making reckless decisions with client funds. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The accusation was so outrageous it almost felt surreal. Then it hit me, he was going for blood. He wasn't content to drain me anymore. He wanted to destroy me. Sir, I managed, my voice trembling, that's a lie. Ryan and I argued this morning. He asked for money, and I said no. This is revenge. Daniel sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. I believe you. Your record here is spotless. But you know the policy. Any mention of client mismanagement has to be reported to HR. The words dropped like stones. I nodded numbly. Of course. He stood, opening the door. Julia's expecting us. The walk to the 12th floor felt endless. Every pair of eyes that flicked toward me in the hallway carried a silent question. By the time we reached the HR suite, my career, everything I'd built through discipline and sacrifice, felt like it was hanging by a single thread. Julia Price sat waiting, expression unreadable behind her glasses. Miss Hayes, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. Daniel filled me in. Your brother claims to have evidence. He says you've sent erratic emails and voicemails. I let out a bitter laugh. Evidence? He's the one who sends threats when I don't give him money. He's twisting everything. Julia folded her hands. I understand this is difficult, but for the protection of the firm, we have to verify everything. That means an internal review. You may be placed on administrative leave until we conclude. Administrative leave, 2 words that could kill a career faster than a pink slip. I forced myself to stay calm, even as panic scraped against my ribs. Ryan's call hadn't been impulsive. It was strategic. This wasn't about the $5,000. And then it clicked. Last week, he'd emailed me about a can't-miss co-investment deal, asking me to review the documents. I told him it looked shady, possibly fraudulent. But he'd made a mistake, he'd accidentally copied me on an internal message to the so-called fund manager. The message mentioned falsified returns and a hidden transfer. Ryan wasn't trying to ruin me out of spite. He was trying to cover himself. He knew if anyone looked too closely at his emails, they'd find something far worse than lies about my sanity. They'd find a crime. The email glowed on my screen, one line burning into my vision. The $50,000 is due Friday. We have your sister's letter of credit on file, so if you default, we'll collect from her directly. At the time, I brushed it off as one of Ryan's usual exaggerations. A letter of credit? I'd never signed such a thing. But now, sitting across from Daniel Mercer and Julia Price, it hit me with sickening clarity. He'd forged my signature. He'd used my name, my professional reputation, to secure a $50,000 loan. Friday was 2 days away. He wasn't just trying to get $5,000 out of me this morning, he was trying to destroy my credibility before the truth caught up to him. When that fund realized he couldn't pay, they'd come straight to me. And if my company already thought I was unstable, no one would question it. The fear that had been clawing at my chest vanished, burned away by something colder, fury so sharp it steadied my hands. This wasn't panic anymore. This was war. And Ryan had just handed me the weapon I needed to win. Julia, I said evenly, my voice calm and clear. You won't need to place me on leave. You won't even need to investigate my mental state. My brother isn't worried about me, he's terrified. And I can prove it. Both Julia and Daniel looked skeptical, but they leaned in as I opened my laptop on the table. My fingers flew across the keyboard. First, I said, pulling up a folder of screenshots. Here's this morning's text thread. Ryan demanded $5,000. Here's my response, polite, firm, professional. And here, I scroll to the next image, is his reply. Threatening me. Daniel's jaw tightened. Julia's eyes narrowed slightly. That establishes motive, I continued, voice steady. Now, here's why he's desperate. I clicked over to my saved emails, opening the thread from last week. He sent me what looked like an investment prospectus, supposedly to get my opinion. But he accidentally forwarded another message, from the fund's manager. I highlighted the incriminating line. The $50,000 is due Friday. We have your sister's letter of credit on file. I met their eyes. I never signed that. I've never heard of this fund. He forged my name and tied it to this firm's reputation. He didn't call you because he was worried. He called to plant a story, to make me look unstable before the fraud was exposed. The room went silent. The kind of silence that only happens when truth hits like a hammer. Daniel leaned forward, his voice low. He used your name to get $50,000. Yes, I said. He was betting that family ties would make you believe him, that I'd look like the problem before anyone asked the right questions. Julia stood abruptly, already dialing her phone. I'm calling legal, she said, her tone hard as steel. And security. We'll get ahead of this immediately. Daniel looked at me, something new in his eyes, respect. Claire, I'm so sorry you were dragged into this. The firm stands behind you. We'll give you every legal resource you need. And we'll pursue this all the way. My phone buzzed on the table, a call from my mother. I silenced it without hesitation. The family I was protecting wasn't the one that excused Ryan's behavior. It was the one I'd built myself, this company, this career, the life I'd earned without anyone's permission. The fallout came fast. Ashford and Vale's legal team descended on the fraudulent fund like a storm. Faced with a lawsuit from a powerhouse investment firm, the manager cracked instantly, handing over every document, including the forged letter bearing my name. Ryan's signature move had finally backfired. For once, he couldn't charm, cry, or con his way out. And as the truth unraveled, I realized I'd finally broken free, not just from his schemes, but from the role my family had written for me decades ago. The digital signature was traced straight back to Ryan's IP address. It was a textbook case of wire fraud and aggravated identity theft. 2 days later, Friday, the day the loan was due, 2 detectives knocked on his apartment door and took him into custody. Naturally, my parents called me in hysterics. How could you let this happen, Claire? My mother sobbed into the phone. You could have just helped him. He's your brother. He sent himself to jail, Mom, I said, my tone flat. He forged my name. He tried to destroy my career to hide what he did. I'm finished protecting him. It's family, my father shouted from the background. Family doesn't do this to each other. You're right, I said quietly. They don't. Goodbye. I hung up and blocked them both. 6 months later, I stood in what used to be Daniel Mercer's office. He'd been promoted to regional director, and I'd taken his place, vice president of portfolio management at Ashford and Vale Investments. Ryan had pled guilty and was serving an 18-month sentence in federal prison. I attended the hearing. He never once looked my way. My parents sent one handwritten letter filled with blame and guilt. I didn't finish reading it. I dropped it in the shred bin and went back to my work. The silence that followed was vast, but not empty. It was steady, beautiful, and whole. It was the sound of peace. My migraines were gone. I slept through the night. For the first time in years, I felt free. I had chosen my future over my family's dysfunction, and it was the best decision I'd ever made. If you're watching this and have ever been made to feel that your success exists only to be siphoned off by others, remember this: your boundaries are not cruelty, they are protection. The discipline my family resented became the shield that saved me. Your strength is not a debt owed to those who refuse to take responsibility for their lives. My name is Claire Hayes. I'm the sister my brother tried to ruin. His crime is now a closed case. My life, on the other hand, is wide open. That is my resolution. That is my peace. If this story speaks to you, like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear that protecting your peace is not selfish, it's survival. Comment below with your own story of choosing yourself at last.